So in this section, I'll talk a little bit about the different tango orchestras and a little bit about the specific decades and how the sound of Argentine tango, musically speaking, changed. Even though they're different orchestras through the different decades, each decade has its particular sound. So the early forms of tango was centered around wandering minstrels called the pajadores. And the pajadores were poets with a guitar, and they would sing pajadas and also play slow milongas or milonga camperas. And the milonga campera always had the bass line, which sounded like this. Again, this 3-3-2 rhythm. There wasn't a whole lot of dancing going on tango-wise to this, but that 3-3-2 rhythm, if you add one extra accent and you speed it up a little bit, gives us the habanera rhythm. Which we've come to know as the milonga rhythm in Argentine tango. And if you slow that down, you get the rhythmic accompaniment for tango milonga, which is the earliest form of Argentine tango. The dance that's associated with tango milonga is called canjengue. Now, the lyrics that were associated with these early tangos in the 19-teens were usually in the first person, a guy bragging about his dance, or they were sarcastic. They were generally more humorous or jovial in nature, a little bit upbeat and kind of fast, so our dance might reflect that. In the 1920s, sextets are formed. Again, that's 2 bandoneons, 2 violins, piano and bass. The rhythm slows down, and we start getting the introduction of the marcado. So the 1920s sound sounds more like this. And that long note right at the end of that little part there is called an arrastre, which is a drag that was frequently used by the orchestras in the 1920s. We also get the form of tango called tango canción that was centered around the famous tango singer Carlos Gardel. And also in the 1920s, we get a whole group of tango poets that start composing lyrics that are more melancholic in nature or nostalgic, sort of sad tangos as we've come to know them. The one exception to the rule on a musical level was Julio de Caro. Julio de Caro was a violinist, and he had his sextet, and he formed what he called the International Melodic School of Tango. So his arrangements, instead of being centered around a heavy rhythmic marcado bass, he centered his arrangements around the melody. So the melody really was the most important thing. As a result, Julio de Caro is a little harder to dance to if you're not familiar, especially with the melodies. But if you are familiar with the melodies, it really puts the melody on a pedestal and makes it very rich. So our dancing might change from the 19-teens to the 1920s. It might slow down, become a little more brooding or nostalgic in terms of its feel, being different from the tango milonga, being more upbeat and jovial and happy. Then in the 1930s, the mid to late 1930s, most orchestras were copying the style of Juan D'Arienzo. Juan D'Arienzo was called El Rey de Compás, or the King of the Beat, and he played in a very fast, rhythmic, driving style that spawned a generation of dancers and really was the beginning of the golden age of dancing because it was so easy to dance to because of its rhythmicness. All the other orchestras saw what was happening, and they also mimicked this style. So again, it's going to be a marcado in 4, what we did before. But it's going to be a little bit more fast and driving in the 30s as opposed to the 1920s. In the 1940s, we get a whole group of tango singers, and a sort of sense, the 40s is sort of more of a romantic decade. It's a little bit slower than the 1930s. It's a little bit more lyrical. And there's a wide variety, since it's the decade where tango, Argentine tango, is the most popular in terms of the number of orchestras and the number of dancers available. We really have a wide range of different things going on. But the new thing being really the introduction of the singer as a main part of the orchestra, and things slowing down and becoming a little more lyrical. In the 1950s, a few orchestras like Carlos Di Sarli and Osvaldo Pugliese slowed down the rhythm even more to the speed almost of the 1920s, or even slower, used more of a marcato in 2, and went for a little more dramatic, spacious sound. So again, using that marcato in 2. Yeah, that would give the music, and ultimately, I guess, our dancing, more a sense of space and drama. Then we have a dry spell of Argentine tango until the 1980s, and in the 1980s we start to have tango DJs, and in the late 90s we start to have different orchestras playing in different styles, some trying to copy Piazzolla, more for listening, some trying to play in the original style of Julio De Caro and Osvaldo Pugliese, a more dramatic, melody-centered style, and some orchestras that are playing more in the style of D'Arienzo. We also have the formation of the genre of electronic tangos with groups such as Gotan Project and Bajo Fondo Tango Club, which are, from a musical standpoint, not playing formally tangos, but using this genre of electronica and incorporating tango elements in order potentially to reach out to a larger audience.